Hello, scrappy friends. Jen here with a layout for you for Tuesday's inspiration. It is St. Patty's Day, and no, this is not a St. Patty's Day layout. But yes, happy St. Patrick's Day if that is of your persuasion. Hope you're wearing your green and that the leprechaun is good to you today. I am sharing the inspiration piece from Mel from a couple of weeks ago. I'm still kind of working through at my own pace all of the inspiration images. So this one was from a couple of weeks ago, but there are layouts by everybody else, Mel, Lynda, and Hollie on their channels. So their links are in my description box down below. You can definitely go and check them out. And we have that really fun rainbow kind of watercolor butterfly image with, it looks like a scroll is kind of put on top. Like it could be a little, journaling element or something like that if you wanted to print it out. And so here's my take on it. I thought about doing an actual kind of scroll, so creating a background and then finding another piece of paper and literally rolling it up and making it look like a scroll. And then I thought I need to challenge myself just a little bit. I have no problem kind of being inspired by something and doing something very literal and obvious, but I also like experimenting and having fun and, just challenging my techniques or challenging something in myself with every inspiration piece. And so for this one, I thought I need to challenge myself in some other way. So we are going to do a bunch of watercolors and let all our colors flow and blend and get that kind of rainbow feel. And then I am going to cut my scroll out of this paper and create more of a frame or a window than putting something on top of the color. So I started off with my watercolors that you see that are a combination of Jane Davenport and Prima, and literally just did rainbow. So you guys know the drill, kind of keep your warms together, keep your cools together. Don't let anything get too muddy with your green. That's kind of the one that seems to muddy things up. If you want to have contrasting colors close to each other, so a perfect example of that is yellow and blue, yellow and orange, green and red, purple and orange, that kind of thing. Let them dry just a little bit in between. They don't have to be perfectly dry. A little bit of blending never hurt anybody. But just let those areas dry just enough, or sop them up with a cloth or something like that, before you let the colors kind of blend too much. So you can kind of see, because I knew I was cutting out my center, where my greens and my purples kind of muddied up to make that brown streak that you see in the center. Those are the colors that you may not want in a nice, fun rainbow. But honestly, it's a rainbow, so every color counts. But yes, that's basically the trick. The other thing you could do if you didn't want to spray directly onto your background paper and kind of play around with it that way and add a bunch of water is you could use the smushing technique. And so you use a little bit less water by kissing the paper kissing whatever you're using to smush to the paper. So you could use a piece of plastic packaging or a Ziploc bag or some acetate, whatever you have, and you could just touch the paper with the colors. You could blend them onto whatever you're using, packaging or whatever, kind of smush them around, and you'll get a softer look. However you want to get some color into your background, you can definitely do that. You could also stamp your images first and then go in and add lots of water and, kind of color in those floral images or whatever images you choose with your rainbow colors, and just let them, leak out a little bit and blend just have fun. Honestly, that is what it's all about when I'm doing stuff like this. It's about having fun. And if you're nervous, because people do say that often, that they just don't know and they don't want to wreck their papers. The first thing I will say is that it is just paper. I know it can be expensive, but you won't completely wreck it. So if you put all this work into it and then you're like, I just don't love where this went, you can salvage that paper by putting it in with your scraps, use it to punch out shapes with your punches, rip it into strips to use as layers. You don't have to just toss it. But if you are nervous and you're just not quite sure how something's going to turn out, grab your watercolors, grab some of your scrap paper, or go to the dollar store, grab a cheap watercolor paper pack. You know, they're not always the best quality, which is fine because if you're doing this directly on cardstock, it probably matches a cardstock quality better than a good watercolor paper. And then just experiment. Start at the top of your page, put some water on the paper, touch your colors to the water, see how they move and blend and shift. Try picking paint up directly with your brush from the palette and putting it onto dry paper and see how that moves and blends when you add other colors to it. You'll find some colors blend really nicely while others granulate a little bit. You'll find, for example, if you're using dollar store Crayola watercolors, that you might want to add a bunch of layers, let it dry, go back in and add some more. You might want to do more right from the palette onto dry paper to intensify the color. If you have more artist grade, like leaning towards the more expensive artist grade watercolors, you might find that they're super intense when you do wet paint onto dry paper, so you want to add a little extra water. Honestly, just experiment and see what happens and build your confidence, and then go for it and have fun. And all of those practice papers that you do, you can use those too. Again, punch shapes out of them, cut them into strips, whatever you want to do. You don't have to waste those. You are learning technique, you are learning about your product, and you just, have some fun, playful papers that you can throw into your stash, and you never know when they might come in handy. So I chose to kind of play with it this way because I definitely wanted to make sure that I had each of the colors kind of represented individually. I didn't want them to blend so much that you couldn't see bright pops of yellow and reds and blues and greens and stuff, because you definitely see that in the inspiration image. But the smushing technique, it's definitely a go-to for me. Would give you probably a much more blended look if that's what you wanted. Or, if you don't want to do rainbow at all, you could definitely do acrylic paint or texture paste, whatever you want to do. And then stamp first. Make sure that it's a waterproof ink so that you can get your color on top and it's not going to bleed or cause any black streaks. Or stamp second, make sure everything's completely dry, and then stamp on top. I added my watercolors, and then that other palette that I had is just the Artist Loft shimmery watercolor palette, which is definitely like a low student grade watercolor palette. But if you spray them, let them sit and get nice and wet and soft, and you'll be able to pick up quite a bit of the shimmery kind of mica pigment. And then I just did color on color because I didn't want to change the colors from the original watercolors. I just wanted to add a little bit of shimmer on there. So it's hard to see it on camera. Occasionally, as I'm turning the layout, the light will catch it just a little bit and you'll kind of see a bit of shimmer. But in real life, it is lovely and shimmery, and I really like that. Also, don't be like me and be a lazy stamper. I know better, and I hear you guys calling me out that I do know better, but definitely my table is not perfectly flat and even, and then my paper is a little bit warped from the watercolors. I definitely needed a mouse pad or a stamping pad of some kind under my layout so that I got nice, clean, crisp stamps, stamped images. I didn't have those, but I was being lazy and I was on a roll. And yeah, I probably should have taken the time to go and get the proper equipment, because after I had done the stamping and then I kind of cut my paper and I rolled it up and then I started looking for embellishments, I think the stamping had already set the mood that I was not enjoying this process. But it may have been the same even if my stamps were coming out crisp. I don't know. But yes, make sure that you have a stamping surface that will give you crisp images, because mine really aren't. But I also thought it was okay. I knew I was going to be adding layers, and really what I wanted was just to get the impression of the stamped images in the same way that the inspiration piece has the stamped, or at least I'm interpreting it as like stamped florals. Whoops, I knocked my table. Stamped florals all around the outside frame. So I was okay with them not being crisp, but I think it did set me on a bit of a spiral where for a little while I was not liking this layout at all. I was struggling. So once I pulled out all the elements that I wanted to use, which are all $49 in Market, and they are mostly from the color swatch collection. Remember, they had the whole collection where they were coming out with all the products that they had in different colors, and I have a lot of that. Just, from being on a design team and stuff. And so I instantly thought of that when I saw this image. I knew I was going to grab for those. I have the acetate packs in green, orange, purple, and pink. And I thought this is going to match the image really well, because they're these beautiful florals and then they have the butterflies. And so I grabbed those out. I grabbed a couple of the really nice thick cardstock tags, and I can't remember what collection that came from, because this is now going back a couple of years. Those acetate packs never end. I feel like I have used them over the last couple of years. It's not that I bought them and stashed them away and never touched them. I have pulled them out so many times and they are still going. So they were definitely a good investment. If you have them, you know what I mean. So anyways, I grabbed the tags, and then I grabbed my beautiful butterflies, and I kind of tucked in some foliage, and I started playing around with that, and I just was not liking how it was looking. I couldn't figure out what was missing. So truth be told, you don't know this, but I actually stopped working on this for a while, took a stretch break, went and played with my kids for a bit, came back. You can see that the lighting is changing because I'm going from morning into evening, and so it's getting a little bit darker outside. So you'll see the shadows changing a bit behind me there, but I needed to take a break because I was not happy. And then I just decided that I was going to work through it, keep going, see what happens. So I started by unrolling my rolled paper, and I inked those edges just to kind of give a bit of contrast with the white, and I feel like it matches everything else in the layout. So I've got those black lines from the stamps. I've got the acetate pieces, which all are outlined in black, and so I thought I'm going to ink all my edges, and that will bring that in the paper. And so I inked my edges, and then I thought I have this like kind of, rolled up piece, and it's got lots of movement to it, and it's very organic. And then I just have these edges at the very ends of my layout that didn't quite fit. So why don't we go back in, smush them down, kind of roll them up. Again, give that feeling of like an old scroll or something like that. Ink those edges as well. And then I tore my little sections, which gave me an opportunity to peek a few more of those little leaves and butterflies out from behind the little kind of peekaboo windows. And it just sort of made it feel a bit more complete. And so I'm much happier with it now. I added a title and I added a bunch of fun little, they're like little, I don't know what they're called, rainbowy enamel dots, I guess. And then these beautiful sequins in all the right colors. So I've got greens and purples and blues and pinks and all of that. And I just dotted them anywhere I thought that it needed a little bit of shimmer, a little bit of shine. And that's it. It kind of came together. Once I decided I was going to make it work, it all came together, and the shimmer on it is so beautiful. I absolutely love it. And that is it for me. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it every time you guys stop in here. Please click subscribe if you haven't already. Check out Hollie, Lynda, and Mel's links down below in the description box. And I will see you all again soon. Happy scrapping. Bye.